Welcome to AZPM News Daily, a wrap-up of all the day's news from Arizona Public Media. I'm Steve Jess. And on our podcast today, Tucsonans take to the streets to protest the latest ICE killings. Ballots are pouring in for the primary election.
Most have already been turned over to the Elections Department for counting.
And we have birthday wishes for a Tucson legend.
I have two adopted children. I made sure that the door was open to their past.
Those stories coming up on this Wednesday, July 15th. First off, today more than 100 people gathered in downtown Tucson to protest the deadly shootings of two men by immigration agents in recent days. Angela Gervasi has this report.
People carried signs commemorating Lorenzo Salgado Araujo and Joan Sebastian Guerrero. Both men were fatally shot by ICE agents, one in Texas and one in Maine. Carla Toledo, a Tucson resident who was detained by ICE and released earlier this year, reflected on the recent shootings.
I kept remembering that I had the chance to go home, and Lorenzo and Joan Sebastian don't have that chance.
Maine Senator Angus King's office told NPR this week that ICE will cease non-urgent vehicle stops in light of the recent shootings. But since then, President Donald Trump has said he opposes that idea. Angela Gervasi, AZPM News.
About 1/3 of Pima County voters have already returned their ballots for next week's primary election. Katia Mendoza has more.
According to the Pima County Recorder's Office, out of the 349,000 ballots sent out, about 115,000 have been returned. Most have already been turned over to the Elections Department for counting. That leaves about 234,000 ballots yet to be returned. Officials say ballots mailed today might not arrive by Election Day, Tuesday. So, if you have a ballot and still want to vote, you can bring it to any of the 120 vote centers throughout Pima County by 7 p.m. on Election Day. The Pima County Recorder now allows voters to show their ID when turning in an early ballot to ensure your vote is counted more quickly. I'm Katia Mendoza, AZPM News.
The Pima County Board of Supervisors Tuesday put off a decision on choosing a new county treasurer. The board voted to delay the issue until its July 28th meeting after discussing the matter behind closed doors. Supervisors did not give a reason for the delay. Former County Treasurer Brian Johnson resigned following complaints of sexual harassment by some of his employees. Johnson is a Democrat, and the law requires him to be replaced by another Democrat. 9 candidates have submitted their names for consideration by the Board of Supervisors. Federal changes to homelessness grants threaten to take $25 million in funding away from Arizona long-term stable housing. From Phoenix, Catherine Davis-Young reports.
Nearly 1,800 formerly homeless Arizonans could be at risk of losing shelter as the Trump administration seeks a major overhaul of federal funding for homelessness programs. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development says it wants to save taxpayer dollars and prioritize addiction and mental health programs. To do that, HUD plans to put new caps on federal funding for a category of shelter called permanent supportive housing. An analysis from the National Alliance to End Homelessness shows Arizona stands to lose nearly $25 million as a result. Tim Birch with the Maricopa Regional Continuum of Care says permanent supportive housing typically serves disabled, chronically homeless individuals, and finding alternative housing options for people in those programs would be extremely difficult.
What are we going to transition these folks to when the average working, healthy family is having difficulty affording housing in our area?
Birch says providers in the Valley are working to tailor their applications to maximize the amount of federal funding they'll receive in the next round of grants. But he says requirements have changed dramatically.
It's really hard to compete when you don't know all the rules.
Grant applications are due in August. A coalition of 21 states, including Arizona, is now suing to block the changes to federal homelessness funding. Catherine Davis-Young, Phoenix.
Arizona's representatives were split as the U.S. House voted this week to adopt daylight saving time year-round. The measure would abolish the spring-ahead, fall-back changes that most Americans follow. Arizona adopted daylight saving time permanently in 1968. All three Arizona Democrats opposed the bill, Tucson's Adelita Grijalva and Greg Stanton and Yasamin Ansari of Phoenix. So did Republicans Paul Gosar and Andy Biggs. States could opt out and choose instead to stay on permanent standard time under the measure, which is known as the Sunshine Protection Act. The bill passed overwhelmingly on a bipartisan 308 to 117 vote. The Arizona delegation split 5-4 against the bill. President Donald Trump has long supported an end to the clock change, calling it inconvenient and costly. State officials confirmed the presence of the measles virus in wastewater samples taken in Sedona. From Flagstaff, Bree Burkett has more.
Samples collected July 7th and July 9th tested positive. The Arizona Department of Health Services says wastewater testing can provide early warning of infectious diseases. The results indicate someone with a recent measles infection has been in the area, but don't show how many people are infected or identify individual cases. Measles is highly contagious and can cause serious illness in children and adults. Symptoms include cough, runny nose, and fever, followed by a rash. Anyone who suspects they may have measles should self-isolate and call a healthcare provider before seeking care.
That's Bree Burkett reporting from Flagstaff. This month marks the 50-year anniversary of the first successful soft landing on Mars. Tony Perkins has more from planetary historians remembering NASA's Viking program.
David Grinspoon of the Tucson-based Planetary Science Institute recalls Viking 1 and 2 were meant to answer the age-old question about life on other worlds in the solar system.
And then when we started sending spacecraft there were these wild oscillations between sort of optimism and pessimism about life on Mars.
The first Viking spacecraft landed on Mars on July 20th, 1976, the 7th anniversary of the first manned landing on the Moon. Since then, more than a half-dozen missions have soft-landed on the Martian surface, including rovers and the first helicopter to fly over another planet. I'm Tony Perkins, AZPM News.
Singer Linda Ronstadt, one of Tucson's most important cultural figures, turned 80 years old on Wednesday. She rose to success in the 60s, selling more than 100 million records worldwide. AZPM spoke with Ronstadt in 2018 about passing her heritage down to her children.
I have 2 adopted children. I made sure that the door was open to their past because I think it's a really difficult thing to have that blocked to anybody. I'm not saying that it's wrong. Sometimes it's necessary, but I think it's very difficult if you can't have a past.
Her career spanned music genres from rock to jazz to mariachi, earning her 11 Grammy Awards. In 2010, Ronstadt retired from performing after being diagnosed with progressive supranuclear palsy, a neurodegenerative disease. She was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2014. And now you're caught up on the stories we've covered today at Arizona Public Media. Thanks for listening. Subscribe to AZPM News Daily wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Steve Jess, and we'll be back tomorrow.